Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to build this awesome DIY Rustic TV stand. Let's go! As always, the first step is to cut all of our pieces to length. I'll leave a link to the plans in the description so you can follow along as well. To make your cuts a little more accurate, I recommend a marking knife instead of a pencil. I just recently switched to this and I'm super happy with the results. If you are new to woodworking, you may not know that you also need to account for the blade thickness or kerf of the blade when making cuts. Saw blades are typically 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch thick, so when I'm making cuts I either cut to the right or left of my line to account for the amount the saw blade is taking out. You'll see me bending down quite often to make sure the blade rests just to the right of my line. Once all of the straight pieces are cut, we'll move on to the angled cuts. For this project, we'll need to make 4 pieces with a 30-degree angle on either side. To do this, I'll first change my meter saw angle to 45 degrees, clamp a scrap piece of wood to the fence, and make a cut. This will give me a 45-degree angle to work from instead of the 90 degrees from the fence. Once this piece is cut, I can then adjust my saw guide to 15 degrees, which will give me a 30-degree angle cut on my workpiece. You just need to make sure to account for the kerf of the blade and make sure the blade finishes at the exact corner of the piece to ensure your dimensions stay intact. I'll just repeat this process 4 times to get 4 identical pieces. The next step is to create a notch in each piece at a 60-degree angle so they fit together to form an X. I'll do this by adjusting my depth stop to exactly the center width of the board. Once that is set, I'll mark the exact center on each piece and mark 3/4 of an inch to either side. This will account for the board width. Once all the pieces are marked, I'll complete 2 cuts on the outer lines and then use a saw blade to notch out the rest of the wood by making repeated cuts. After checking the fit to make sure everything was lined up, I moved over to the workbench and loosely laid out the pieces that make up one of the legs. My favorite method of securing wood together is pocket holes. They allow for a super strong joint and are able to be hidden fairly easily. I'm using a Craig pocket hole jig here. If you haven't used one before, you simply need to set the thickness of your wood on both the drill stop and the jig, clamp the jig to the workpiece, and drill the holes. Once the holes are drilled, I'll use 2.5 inch pocket hole screws to secure these together. You may need a right angle drilling attachment like this for this project, as it gets a little tricky to reach in some places. Once the first joint was secure, I then added wood glue to the rest of the joint faces and then secured it in place by securing the bottom side of the leg. This will sandwich everything together. Once the leg was done, I just repeated the process to create another identical leg and then loosely place everything on the table in the order they should go, top side facing the bench. Once everything was in place, I drilled pocket holes into all connecting 2x2 boards and secured them all to the main supports. After the top pieces were put together, I drilled pocket holes in another set of 4 2x2s and then assembled them to the main supports as well. I just used a couple of 10.5-inch spacer blocks that I cut here to ensure all the pieces were at exactly the same height. The next step is to make the inner shelving. I gathered up a couple of my 2x6 boards and drilled 8 pocket holes on the inner side of one of the pieces to secure them together. Once the boards were together, I then drilled another 8 pocket holes on the outer edges of this piece that will allow us to secure it to the main frame we made earlier. Then I just repeated the process to create another identical piece. And then put the frame we made earlier back on my workbench and secured the middle shelf to the frame using the pocket holes we made earlier. Once this middle shelf was installed, I then drilled pocket holes into another 4 2x2 pieces we cut earlier and installed them onto the frame. Once these were installed, I then secured the bottom shelf in place with pocket holes as well. After the shelves were installed, I flipped the bench over and drilled pocket holes into the main supports facing upward. We will use these to secure the top piece to the frame later. The next step is to make the top piece. We'll do this by drilling pocket holes into the 2 outer pieces facing inward, and then securing them together with 2.5-inch pocket hole screws. Once everything was together, I sanded this down with 80 grit, 150 grit, and then 220 grit. An awesome sanding trick is to lightly scrub the surface with a pencil between grits. Once the pencil is gone, you know you have an even sanding pattern and a smooth finish. After the top was complete, I went ahead and repeated the process on the bottom piece. After everything was sanded smooth, I then went on to finish the bottom with 2 coats of flat white paint and then work on the top piece. The best way to get an even finish with wood stain is to use a pre-stained conditioner like Varathane. Simply apply with a foam brush, wipe off the excess, and wait 10 minutes. After the pre-stain conditioner has soaked into the wood, we can apply our stain. I use this Varathane dark walnut stain for a lot of my projects as I love the color it brings out in the wood. We'll apply it the same way as the pre-stain conditioner by applying it with a foam brush and then wiping off the excess. I then let everything dry for a full 24 hours. After the top was fully dry, I applied a Varathane matte finish on the top and secured it to the base with pocket holes we made earlier.
Here we go.
Overall, I'm super happy how this project turned out and can't wait to show it off at future gatherings. If you learned something, liked this video, or just found it entertaining, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you again soon.